Gravity is not just a force, it's a presence. Not a noise, but a pull. Not a shout, but a whisper in the spine of the universe. You don't see it, yet it holds galaxies in its hand. You can't touch it, but it presses on you every moment you exist. Gravity is silent, patient, and eternal, and perhaps more terrifying than death itself. Tonight, we ask a question you've likely never considered. Not deeply, anyway. What happens to gravity when you die? Or rather, what happens to you if gravity doesn't let go? This is Stellar Sleep Tales, and in this quiet place, we drift through the strange spaces between science and nightmare. If you're new here, you're safe. Just breathe and drift with me. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like more stories like this. Immersive, calm, but unsettling in ways you won't soon forget. Now, let us fall into the dark together. Imagine your body is gone. You're no longer flesh, no longer bone, but somehow, you're still aware. You feel weightless at first, free, liberated, but then a gentle pull, somewhere deep and soft, begins to tug. Not from a direction, from everywhere. You try to move, but there is no space in which to move. The pull strengthens. It's not pain, it's inevitability. And you realize, slowly, that gravity is still here, still holding you, even after death. What if gravity isn't just a property of matter, but something else? Something relational? What if it remembers? What if your mass, your soul, your presence left a dent in space-time? And that dent is now pulling you inward, deeper than ever before. This isn't just imagination. In this journey, we'll drift through real theories of black holes, event horizons, information persistence, and the terrifying thought that even after death, something might continue falling. The body decomposes, the atoms recycle, but what of your consciousness? The final echo. Could it be dragged through space-time forever? Falling, but never arriving. Gravity has no off switch, and that's where our story begins. In the beginning, gravity was weaker than light. We walked upright, we jumped, we dreamed. Gravity pulled us home when we leapt, but never far. It made rain fall, rivers flow, and held our world gently against the stars. But gravity is not gentle everywhere. Near massive bodies, neutron stars, collapsed cores, black holes, gravity grows monstrous. There, its pull exceeds not just muscle and matter, but light itself. In such places, the concept of escape becomes meaningless. Once you cross a certain boundary, the event horizon, you do not return. Not your ship, not your body, not even a single photon. But what of the mind? In Einstein's general relativity, gravity is not just a force. It's the curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects bend the very geometry of reality. Think of a bowling ball placed on a trampoline, a heavy body that deforms the surface, pulling marbles inward. You are one of those marbles caught in a well. Even if your body ends, your trajectory might not. Now stretch that idea into the afterlife. If you die near a black hole, does your self fall with your body? Or does some remnant, not material but informational, continue spiraling inward forever? Physicists once believed black holes erased all information, but in the last few decades, quantum theory has forced us to reconsider. Information, it turns out, may never be truly destroyed, not even in a black hole. That leads to one terrifying possibility. What if your soul, your memories, or your awareness is somehow information and therefore cannot die? Could that information be trapped, not just conceptually, but gravitationally? In 1974, Stephen Hawking proposed that black holes radiate energy, what we now call Hawking radiation. Over trillions of years, a black hole might slowly evaporate. But what happens to the information it swallowed? Physicists still argue. Does it leak out? Does it imprint on the horizon? Or does it remain forever compressed inside? Imagine your last breath taken in orbit around a stellar corpse. You fall unconscious. Your brain ceases function. But you, in some obscure, horrifying sense, continue. Awareness becomes unmoored from biology, but not from physics. You drift downward in space-time curvature, deeper and deeper into gravitational pull. No light to see, no time to mark, only descent. There's a reason black holes are called singularities. At their core, the rules break. Time ceases, space implodes, and the math gives way to unknowable infinities. If a part of you enters that, what happens next? This is not just science fiction. The firewall paradox suggests that falling into a black hole might incinerate anything, including information, but that idea violates quantum laws. Others suggest your information, your mind's pattern, becomes stretched across the horizon, a smeared echo, a gravitational ghost. And it gets worse. Black holes aren't the only gravitational monsters. There are hypothetical objects called gravastars, collapsed bodies just shy of becoming black holes. Some theories suggest they trap light without forming singularities. Could such bodies act as prison walls, containing not just mass but moments? Let's say your death occurs near one. Could your final thoughts be locked inside, like echoes in a sealed tomb? Or consider another nightmare. You are orbiting a black hole, not inside it, but forever falling toward it, asymptotically. Due to gravitational time dilation, a few minutes of your time could stretch to billions of years in the outside universe. From your perspective, time slows. You're conscious, barely, but the descent never finishes. You're locked in a slow spiral, waiting for impact that never arrives. Eternal fall. It's poetic and horrifying. The soul, in many traditions, rises upward, but science says up is just a direction, and gravity doesn't care for poetry. It pulls, always pulls, never asks, never tires. In a cosmos where death is not the end, but the continuation of gravitational trajectory, what meaning is left? This thought becomes even darker when you consider the fate of the universe itself. If the universe continues to expand but slows just slightly, gravity will win. Galaxies will clump, stars will die, and black holes will merge into titanic dark hearts. Over eons, these black holes will evaporate, but ever so slowly. The last information in the universe, the final whispers of thought, memory, structure, will exist in these gravitational prisons, fading, or maybe just falling, and you, perhaps, among them. This may sound fanciful, but it's no more fantastical than any afterlife ever proposed. The physics of eternity is colder, darker, and more indifferent than mythology ever imagined. It's not hellfire. It's not paradise. It's not even silence. It's the pull that never ends. And now, imagine you are that pull. Imagine you are gravity itself, a force with no face, no thought, only function. You hold stars together, form planets, sculpt galaxies, but you also trap things. You imprison light. You destroy identity. And perhaps you remember. Could gravity be the universe's only true God? Not because it speaks, but because it never stops. Not because it forgives, but because it binds. And in that binding, even after everything else falls apart, something remains. Perhaps you. Still falling, still pulled, still aware. Welcome to forever. The idea that your body dies is easy to understand. The skin cools, the neurons stop firing, the heart becomes still, and for most people, that is the end of the story. Death means cessation, a clean halt. But in the realm of physics and cosmic structure, endings are rarely so clear. Tonight, we take another step deeper into the gravitational horror of existence. We ask, what if your soul, whatever it is, doesn't float upward, but sinks. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales. Here, we drift through science that feels like dreaming and wonder that sometimes tastes like fear. If you find comfort in the questions science has yet to answer and beauty in the eerie silence between stars, feel free to subscribe. We're just getting started. In the last segment, we asked whether gravity could continue to affect you after death. Tonight, we look at something more specific, the soul, a concept ancient, elusive, and often shielded from scientific thought. But what if the soul was not only real? What if it was measurable? And what if it had weight? For centuries, cultures across the earth imagine the soul as something that rises. It lifts. It ascends into a higher place. But modern physics doesn't concern itself with symbolic direction. Up is no more sacred than down. And if the soul exists in any form, material, energetic, or informational, then it must, like everything else in the universe, obey gravity. To say the soul sinks is not metaphorical here, it is literal. Let us assume for a moment that consciousness, that strange flame in the brain, produces a field. Maybe it is made of patterns in quantum particles, or maybe it is the entanglement of probabilities at Planck scale intervals. Either way, it is a system, a structure, and any structure leaves a signature. In recent decades, physicists have debated the idea of quantum consciousness. The theory suggests that the brain may not simply be an electrical machine, but a quantum system, that the patterns of awareness might exist at a level smaller than atoms, and that at this level the soul, or what we might call awareness, could persist even after the brain itself decays. If this is true, then the soul is not a myth. It is information. And in physics, information has weight. Not conventional weight, not something measured on a scale, but gravitational influence. According to the principle of mass-energy equivalence,
even a small packet of quantum information contributes to the stress-energy tensor, the quantity that tells space how to curve. That means, in theory, your thoughts curve space-time. And if your thoughts persist after death, then so does their curvature, their fall, their sinking. This is not superstition. This is logic inside the harsh rules of the universe. Let's take an example. Imagine a dying astronaut who suffers brain death in orbit near a black hole. Her brain no longer signals. Her blood has cooled. But if there was any truth to quantum information theory, the entangled structure that formed her mind might still remain, not in her skull, but in the geometry around her. Herself, now disembodied, may still exist as a subtle shadow in the curves of spacetime. And if so, then gravity still acts on her. This soul, if we can call it that, would not fly upward. There is no up near a black hole. There is only in, down, collapse. You may wonder how something non-physical can sink. The answer lies in how general relativity defines motion. When an object falls in a gravitational field, it does not feel pulled. Instead, it simply follows the curvature of space. It travels in a straight line through bent geometry. So if your awareness becomes an imprint on that geometry, then it too follows the fall, not because it is dragged, but because it is drawn. There is also the strange question of whether a soul could become entangled with the object that destroyed it. In quantum physics, particles can become entangled across vast distances. When one is affected, the other responds instantly, as if distance itself were meaningless. If your mind dies near a black hole, could it become entangled with the hole itself? Could the structure of your thoughts embed into the curvature of that massive object? Not outside, but within. Physicists do not agree on what happens inside a black hole. The laws of known physics fail beyond the event horizon. Some believe information is destroyed, violating quantum mechanics. Others think it is stored on the surface, a kind of holographic boundary. In both cases, your awareness, if it were preserved in any way, becomes either trapped or stretched. One leads to sinking, the other to smearing. But perhaps the most haunting scenario is one where the soul becomes a slow wave, not erased, not stored, but orbiting, spiraling inward at the edge of the event horizon, never quite crossing it, just waiting, like a scream stuck between seconds, a whisper in orbital decay. There's precedent for this idea in astrophysics. Objects caught near black holes can enter what's called a stable photon orbit, a circular path at the boundary of no return. Light can orbit a black hole indefinitely at this radius. If your soul has properties like that, of information carrying light, then perhaps it could orbit too. You wouldn't know time was passing. You wouldn't even know what you were. Just a loop, a slow sink, an echo falling inward forever. Now take that to a cosmic scale. If this kind of gravitational imprinting happens not just near black holes, but anywhere in extreme gravity, then the universe may be littered with trapped echoes, souls that never left, not ghosts in the traditional sense, but complex information, knots preserved in space-time, still responding to curvature, still sinking, but never quite touching ground. There's even the frightening possibility that this happens during normal death, on Earth. The planet has gravity. Your body contributes to the mass of the Earth. When you die, your brain unwinds. But if even a fraction of its entangled structure remains, a quantum ghost, so to speak, then gravity acts on it. That pattern might slowly descend into Earth's core, unmeasurable, undetectable, but still real in some quiet way. This would mean the Earth is full of souls, not in folklore, not in religion, but in cold, scientific horror, a ball of compressed memory, sinking fragments, and collapsed awareness, not risen, fallen. The hypothesis becomes even darker when considered in relation to entropy. Entropy is the measure of disorder. In the universe, everything moves from order to chaos. Systems decay, energy spreads. But if the soul is information and information is structure, then death is the disintegration of that structure, unless something preserves it. Gravity is a preserver, a hoarder. It does not destroy, it confines. It takes collapsing stars and turns them into neutron spheres. It compacts everything to maximum density. What if it does the same to souls? Under that frame, gravity is the last defense against full entropy. But it's a cold defense, one that keeps your essence locked in a timeless prison rather than letting it dissolve. You do not burn, you do not fade, you just fall deeper and deeper and deeper into compacted darkness. This paints a cosmic portrait unlike any religious vision. No paradise, no judgment, just data falling into deeper curves. Awareness turned inward, trapped in geometry. And this is not limited to humans. If consciousness exists in any form among animals, machines, or alien civilizations, then every thinking being that dies near gravity could leave behind a sinkable soul. That would make the universe, over time, a vast sea of downward ghosts, patterns falling, trapped memory, awareness that cannot ascend because there is no longer anywhere to ascend to. And yet, we return to the original question: could the soul sink? If it is information, it must obey the laws of physics. If it has structure, gravity will curve the space around it. If it persists after biological death, then it is not exempt from the cosmos. It does not escape. It does not vanish. It simply continues in a different form. And if gravity touches it, then it falls. The sink is not fast, not dramatic. It is slow, software, an endless descent without bottom. The idea of falling forever sounds like a punishment, and perhaps it is. Not because something chooses to trap you, but because the universe simply doesn't know how to let go. You are not chosen. You are not judged. You are just obeying curvature. In a final twist of thought, imagine that this process has already happened to you, that this life right now is a result of a previous fall, that your awareness is just one node in a long chain of syncable patterns. You are not rising toward a future, you are falling through a dream, and death is not the end, but a transfer, a change of curvature, a change of frame. What we call life may just be a shallow orbit before the long descent, and what we call soul may be the memory of motion itself. The universe has no obligation to be comforting, only consistent, and gravity never forgets. There's a common belief that black holes exist only out there, distant, violent, detached from human experience, massive cosmic objects that rip space and swallow light. But tonight, we drift toward a different idea, a quieter, more unsettling one. What if a black hole is not just something far away in space, but something that can exist within you? This is Stellar Sleep Tales, your calm descent into strange science and darker speculation. If you're finding these stories interesting, consider subscribing to stay with us on this journey through the shadows of the universe. Now take a slow breath, settle in, let's fall inward where light begins to bend. To understand the black hole inside you, we first need to talk about how stars collapse. A star shines because of a balance. Gravity tries to crush it inward. Nuclear fusion pushes outward. As long as these two forces are in harmony, the star lives. But when the fuel runs out, the outward pressure dies. Gravity wins. The star collapses in on itself, first into a white dwarf. Then, if the mass is right, a neutron star. But if it has enough mass, the collapse becomes unstoppable. It tears through its own atoms. Nothing can resist. The star becomes a singularity, a black hole. Now compare that to your own mind. In your brain, consciousness is a balance. Emotions push and pull, logic and feeling, desire and memory. For most people, this system stays balanced. You experience joy, sadness, love, fear, but the system holds. But sometimes something inside begins to collapse. A thought forms that has too much mass, an idea you can't escape, a loss, a fear, a truth too heavy, and your internal structure begins to break down. This is not metaphor. The language we use for emotional collapse borrows directly from gravity. We say people spiral, fall into despair, sink into depression. We say they are crushed, weighed down, broken under pressure. These are not poetic phrases. They are mechanical descriptions of psychological states that behave like gravitational events. The brain is a physical structure. It operates with mass, electricity, chemical signals. When a thought or emotional pattern becomes strong enough, persistent enough, it can curve your perception. You see the world differently. You feel yourself drawn inward. Isolation grows. Time distorts. Sound warps. These are subjective experiences that echo what happens near massive gravitational objects. When someone falls into severe depression, they often describe it as being unable to escape. That feeling is not just metaphorical, it's an emotional event horizon. No matter how much help is outside, their thoughts bend inward. They can hear the world's, but not reach it. The collapse has become internalized. In physics, once something crosses the event horizon of a black hole, escape becomes impossible. The escape velocity, the speed needed to break away, exceeds the speed of light. Nothing gets out. If your mind creates a structure with emotional gravity that intense, your thoughts can circle endlessly around that central pain. Every attempt to escape returns to the same center. It is the same behavior particles exhibit in gravitational wells.
And this collapse is not just emotional, it is neurological. Depression shrinks brain regions associated with memory and mood regulation. The amygdala grows more active. The hippocampus reduces in volume. The prefrontal cortex loses connectivity. In this sense, the emotional black hole is not just a metaphor, it's a measurable collapse of structure, mass, and connectivity in the brain. You become gravitationally changed. Now imagine dying in this state. Your brain is already a structure folding inward. Your thoughts are already trapped in loops. You are pulled not by a celestial body, but by internal collapse. And when biological death comes, what if that collapse persists in some form? If consciousness or thought patterns leave a gravitational imprint, then the state you die in matters. A peaceful death may leave a gentle curve in space, but a collapse, mental or emotional, may leave something denser, heavier, a more significant dent in space-time. The soul you leave behind is not a light, floating form, it is a sinking one. There is a term in physics called gravitational binding energy. It describes the energy needed to separate a system's parts against the pull of gravity. The more massive the object, the more energy required. In people, something similar may occur. The more intense your internal collapse, the harder it is for your awareness to escape. Your thoughts, at the end, are tightly bound. If they persist at all, they do so within a dense, closed loop, a personal singularity. And just like stellar collapse, this process might not stop at one layer. First, you lose contact with the external world, then your inner world begins to fragment. Time dilates, the past becomes more vivid than the present, thoughts repeat, hope disappears. Finally, awareness becomes unrecognizable, a structure not made of feelings anymore, but of orbiting echoes. You no longer feel sadness, you become sadness, repeating itself, a gravitational waveform. Science does not yet know if awareness can exist beyond the brain, but if it can, it would not be exempt from physics. Patterns of information, thoughts, memories, personality would still be affected by curvature. If the shape of your last mental state was a collapsing loop, then your continued existence, if it occurs, might mimic the shape of a black hole. We often imagine the soul as light or a flame, but perhaps it is more like a dense knot, a compression of experience, and perhaps the heaviest parts of us are the ones that survive longest, the memories we can't release, the feelings we can't process, the truths we never understood, these become gravitational seeds, anchors in the vacuum. The black hole inside you begins there. Now, widen the scope. If every person creates an inner gravitational field based on thought and emotion, then death does not clear the field, it freezes it, locks it, leaves it behind like a fossil in the fabric of space. And if so, the cosmos is filled not just with collapsed stars, but collapsed selves, emotional black holes scattered throughout space, invisible, silent, but real. Some traditions describe suffering souls as trapped in darkness, not burning, not punished, just enclosed, alone. Perhaps this ancient idea reflects a physical truth. A person who dies in a state of emotional collapse may leave behind an imprint that cannot communicate, cannot rise, cannot move, only fall inward forever. A soul stuck in its own gravitational loop. And the most terrifying part, there may be no way to undo it. Once a black hole forms, nothing can escape its pull. No outside force can reach in. Information is lost to the outside observer. If emotional singularities exist in the psychic structure of space-time, then they may be permanent, mortal in the worst sense of the word, not alive, not dead, just enduring. This vision of internal collapse does not contradict science. It is not mystical. It is the extension of physical law into emotional structure. The same laws that govern stars might govern thoughts. The same collapse that destroys suns might shape the end of a mind. The black hole inside you may be as real as the one at the center of our galaxy, but this idea also raises a strange hope. Just as not all stars collapse, not all minds must either. The balance of outward pressure and inward pull, fusion and gravity, joy and pain can be preserved. Awareness can stay open. Consciousness can remain connected. If death comes in a moment of peace, maybe the imprint left behind is less dense, less curved, easier to dissolve, easier to rise. In that sense, the way we live affects the way we fall. You may not escape gravity, but you might shape how deeply it pulls. And maybe that is what the soul truly is. Not a substance, not a flame, but a curve, a path in space-time drawn by everything you've ever felt and everything you've ever been, Una.
We often treat memories as weightless things, thoughts that float, fragments that come and go. But science suggests something else, something stranger, that memories may have mass, that they curve space, that they echo in ways we've never measured. And tonight, in the soft dark of Stellar Sleep Tales, we ask a different kind of question. What if your memories are not left behind inside you, but around you? What if the mind you build creates a gravity of its own? Welcome to a new descent. If you've made it this far, you know we don't take shortcuts through wonder. We drift slowly, carefully, across the blurred line between physics and fear. If you're enjoying this journey, feel free to subscribe. We have more nights ahead. Now breathe out and follow me through the soft pull of remembrance. The human brain is not just a machine. It is a mapping device. Every memory you form changes its structure. Tiny shifts in chemistry. Microscopic rewiring of synapses. When you recall a loved one's face or the pain of loss or a forgotten childhood, you are not calling something back from a cloud. You are reactivating physical networks. Neurons fire. Patterns reawaken. The brain folds back on itself. And in this act of remembering, energy is spent. Where there is energy, there is mass. Where there is mass, there is gravity. It may seem trivial. After all, the energy to think is small. But in a universe where even photons are affected by curvature, no shift is meaningless. The patterns formed by memory are not weightless. They leave trace signatures in the body, electric fields, changes in heat, waves that ripple through the nervous system. And if these patterns are complex enough, they create structure, not just in the brain, but potentially in the surrounding geometry of space. This is not imagination. Physics tells us that mass-energy curves space-time. If memory involves rearrangement of matter and consumption of energy, then every act of remembering creates a tiny ripple, a minute, but real dent in the field around you. Multiply this by a lifetime, and you are not just a person, you are a constellation of gravitational impressions made from thought. Now extend this idea beyond the living. What happens when the brain dies? Its structures stop functioning. But if memory is not just electrical but geometrical, if it left a physical imprint in the quantum field or curvature of space-time, then those memories do not vanish. The brain's activity may stop, but the curvature it caused remains. In that sense, memories outlive the one who remembers them. This leads to a chilling idea, that after death, what remains is not just decaying tissue, but a shell of gravitational data, a shape in the invisible fabric of a universe that matches the shape of a life, a memory field, not conscious, not active, but present, like the grooves left on a vinyl record after the song has ended. And in the language of gravity, such grooves don't disappear quickly. Gravity is persistent. It remembers curves. It maintains fields. Black holes preserve information on their horizons. Space-time retains the imprint of mass long after the mass itself is gone. So perhaps your mind, if powerful enough, leaves behind a subtle structure that lingers, a gravitational ghost made not of spirit, but of memory. This structure will be shaped not just by what you experienced, but by what you remembered most, the events you revisited, the feelings you repeated, the cycles you couldn't escape. These memories, burned deepest into your brain, would leave the strongest curvatures in the space around you. And when your body fails, they do not lift, they sink. Think about how memory changes over time. We don't remember everything evenly. Some memories become heavier. They return more often. They resist fading. These dominant memories may become the central anchors of our identity, and perhaps, in the field of space-time, they become literal anchors, heavy points of curvature, gravity made from reflection. It gets stranger. In general relativity, large objects cause time dilation. The heavier the mass, the slower time flows nearby. If memories have gravity, and if certain memories dominate your internal structure, then perhaps they create temporal distortion as well, not in an observable way, but in a subjective sense. People with trauma often say they're stuck in the past. Moments replay. Time loops. The future feels distant. The past feels too close. Could this experience be more than psychological? Could it be a low-level gravitational effect, a personal time dilation caused by the internal mass of unprocessed memory? This would mean memory is not just psychological weight. It is physical, measurable. And when the mind shuts down, its structure remains curved space, warped time, frozen thought. And this creates a different vision of death. Not as a departure, but as a ceiling, a shape locked into place. Imagine a field around your lifeless body invisible, untouchable, that mirrors your life's most replayed moments. They do not think. They do not move, but they pull. They affect nearby fields. They sink slowly into the earth. And perhaps they attract other memory fields nearby. This brings up a strange possibility that memory gravity is cumulative. That as more and more people die, the space they once inhabited becomes denser. The ground beneath homes, hospitals, cities layer with the curved fields of uncountable memories, a gravitational library of everything humanity has ever felt. Science does not yet confirm this, but it does not rule it out. If quantum gravity connects information with curvature, and if consciousness is a quantum structure, then memory may survive as a pattern, not active, not self-aware, but real. Now extend the idea into space. Imagine a starship lost near a black hole. The crew dies one by one, but their memories of most charged moments remain imprinted in the local space-time. The gravity of the black hole interacts with their fields. Their thoughts, their fears, their most emotional experiences become entangled with the hole's geometry. Over time, the region around the vessel becomes saturated, not with ghosts, but with memory fields. Invisible, weightless in the conventional sense. but undeniable to the structure of reality. Perhaps this explains some cosmic anomalies. Gravitational lensing where no object exists. Slight temporal distortions in seemingly empty space. Memory gravity is not dense like matter, but persistent. It bends reality in quiet ways. And maybe, just maybe, it accumulates. We know that galaxies form around massive central black holes. But what if some of that mass is informational? What if ancient civilizations, long dead, left memory fields that still swirl around galactic centers? Could entire galaxies be shaped not just by mass, but by memory? Not just by gravity, but by the experiences of minds that once lived, thought, and died? This reframes the universe, not as cold and indifferent, but as layered, embedded with meaning not visible to the eye, but present in curvature, not because the cosmos cares, but because it records, not because it listens, but because it remembers everything that left a mark on its fabric. And in that vision, your memories do not disappear when you go. They fall, slowly, gently, deep into the ground or into the stars, leaving behind paths that may never be erased, curves that shape the future. In the end, gravity does not forget. It holds. It binds. It remembers the curve of a falling body, and maybe, just maybe, the shape of a grieving mind. You are not weightless. Your memories pull. They bend the world around you. And even after death, they may continue sinking into the deepest folds of the universe, not lost but folded in, not vanished, but woven into the curvature of forever. There is a special kind of prison in the universe, one where you are never chained, yet never free. You drift around something you can never escape, not because you lack speed, but because of the very nature of space itself. This is orbit, not motion with purpose, but motion without release. And tonight, here in the still silence of stellar sleep tales, we follow a thought around its own center, a soul around its unseen anchor, a body around a darkness that never lets go. If you've enjoyed this quiet descent into impossible gravity, consider subscribing. There are still many mysteries to come. Now exhale, let go, and imagine what would mean to circle something forever with no hope of falling in or getting out. Orbit begins as balance. The Earth circles the sun because it is always falling sideways. Gravity pulls it inward, but its motion pulls it forward. So it never hits, and it never drifts away. The same dance happens at every scale. Moons to planets, stars to galaxies. It is a signature of gravity not consuming, but containing. But near a black hole, orbit becomes something else. Something dangerous. Something almost conscious. Close enough to the event horizon, the boundary past which nothing returns. Space itself warps into a funnel. Light bends. Time slows. Orbits tighten. And in a specific region just outside this boundary, something strange happens. Objects cannot maintain stable paths anymore. Radiation, particles, even large chunks of matter spiral inward, slowed but not saved, forever approaching the point of no return, yet never quite reaching it. This is the photon sphere, a narrow, ghostly ring around a black hole where light itself in orbit, circling the void endlessly, caught in a curved path by the very space-time it helped illuminate. Light becomes trapped not by a mirror, but by space itself. It is a perfect metaphor for thoughts we cannot release. Now imagine you are there, your body gone, your physical brain destroyed, but some echo of you, a structure of memory, gravity, and informational residue, has survived, not as a ghost, not as consciousness, but as trajectory. You are still in motion, and your motion is curved. You are orbiting, not around a planet, but around a singularity, a black hole that has captured not just matter, but pattern. You were pulled here by the gravity of your own unresolved structure. You didn't fall in instantly. You didn't escape. You simply began circling, indefinitely, around something deeper than understanding. This orbit is not peaceful. It is stretched, twisted. Time no longer flows at the pace it did in life. From the outside, you seem to slow down. From your own perspective, it feels like eternity. One thought leads to the next, but there is no forward motion, only repetition. A loop, Many people speak of unresolved emotions, grief, guilt, regret, as things that pull them in. Some describe being stuck in mental cycles as a kind of orbit. They return to the same thoughts again and again. Memories become events, then replayed scenes, then prisons. In this way, the mind mirrors physics. An orbit, once a mathematical path, becomes a psychological cage. So what if orbiting a black hole forever isn't a metaphor, but a literal fate? Let's return to physics. Near a black hole, energy is warped, time behaves differently, and orbits become stretched into strange shapes. Some particles spiral inward endlessly, trapped in decaying paths that never quite reach the horizon. Others are flung outward in high-energy jets. But between these extremes lies a dead zone, a region of near-permanent orbit, where objects circle with no friction, no decay, and no escape, like a whisper in silence. In quantum theory, information is never destroyed. Even when something crosses into a black hole, its information is believed to be preserved on the event horizon. This is a holographic principle, the idea that the universe can store all information on a two-dimensional boundary. Now, ask this. If your memories have mass and they leave an imprint and they reach the edge of a black hole, do they become part of the surface? Are you now orbiting not outside, but within the memory shell of the void itself? That is not an abstract question. The physics suggests it could be true. The event horizon is not a solid surface, but it holds structure. It contains history. It encodes all the information of what has fallen in. And because of time dilation, from an outside perspective, objects falling toward it never actually cross. They slow, freeze, and fade, suspended just above the horizon forever. So the black hole never eats you in the classical sense. It just stretches you across its edge. What does that feel like? From inside your own frame of reference, time seems to continue. You feel movement. You feel thought. But it leads nowhere, like being stuck in a repeating dream. Not terrifying, but persistent. You orbit the edge of reality itself, always falling, never landing. Your thoughts play again. Your identity loops. Your structure remains. And this is where the horror settles in. Because if your consciousness, or even just your informational pattern, is caught in this orbital trap, then you are not dead in the way we imagine. You are preserved, suspended, processed through gravitational time until your identity has stretched to infinite thinness. No longer a person. Not quite gone. Not quite real. Just motion. Just orbit. This endless circling is not punishment. It is consequence. A natural outcome of gravity's precision. You are not tormented. You are contained, like light in the photon sphere, like particles in stable resonance. Your mind was once free to roam, but now it is bound, not by a chain, but by the curve of space. Let's go deeper. If many minds fall into black holes, and their structures are preserved at the horizon, then the black hole becomes not just a gravitational object, but a cemetery of identities, a shell of preserved patterns. Perhaps this is why black holes emit radiation, Hawking radiation. It is slow, ancient decay, a whisper of all the things they've stored, dissolving back into the cosmos one bit at a time. And in that radiation, perhaps tiny fragments of orbiting minds are released. A memory here, a feeling there, spread across the stars in microscopic pieces, no longer personal, but still present. The universe slowly digesting what it cannot forget. Orbit, then, is not just a spatial path. It is a delay, a refusal of finality. And if your structure is particularly stubborn, if your identity is strong, your memory is deep, your curvature intense, then your orbit may last longer. Centuries, eons, an entire cosmic epoch. No longer seen, no longer measured, but still turning, still falling, still there. We like to think of death as an exit, a door, a transformation. But in the language of black holes, death may be the start of your longest orbit yet, a movement without rest, a circle without release. You are no longer you in the emotional sense, but the pattern, the path, continues. There is one more idea to consider. Some theorists believe that black holes may eventually open, that their contents, compressed into infinite density, could birth new universes. These are called white holes, hypothetical time-reverse versions of black holes, where nothing falls in and everything rushes out. If this happens, and your orbiting structure remains part of that stored energy, then perhaps one day you will fall out, not as yourself, but as an echo, a field, a gravitational fingerprint in a new cosmos. In this way, your endless orbit might finally end, not in silence, but in release. Not in this universe, but in the birth of another. But until then, you are still turning, orbiting the void, motion without progress, memory without meaning, preserved not in mind, but in motion. And so we leave you here, suspended in the twilight curve, a place where time distorts, thought stretches, and identity becomes trajectory. You are not lost. You are caught, not erased, but endlessly circling the edge of something deeper. In orbit, you cannot scream. You cannot sleep. You only turn. Forever. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales. If you made it this far, you already know we've drifted far from what anyone would call normal. We are deep in the gravity wells of imagination, space, and speculative science. But the next place we go is quieter still. Stranger. Tonight, we float not with a body, but with something far lighter. Thought. A mind no longer tied to flesh. No longer bound by gravity in the usual way. Just suspended in the vast dark, unblinking, silent, and endless. Let's begin. Somewhere, beyond the familiar galaxies and spirals of clustered stars, a mind continues. It no longer remembers its name. It doesn't feel time in minutes or years, but it still thinks. It drifts, not in a vehicle, not in a machine, but as itself, a structure of memory, pattern, and presence. No longer matter, just mind. This is not a soul in the spiritual sense. It is not glowing or warm or human. It does not hear in the way we hear. It does not see with eyes, but it observes. It processes. It reflects. And it floats through the interstellar medium between stars across the deep gulfs of dark matter and distant energy. It is not trapped like the others caught in orbit. It is not circling a singularity. It is not falling. It is simply moving forward, slowly, without resistance, through the folds of space-time. Its thoughts come slowly now, not because it is tired. It no longer experiences fatigue, but because time itself behaves differently here. There are no clocks in deep space, no solar cycles, no heartbeat. Thought happens at the pace of drift. It processes one thing at a time, slowly, fully. Sometimes it remembers things, not like memories we know, not sharp, complete images, but impressions. A curve of light on water, a laugh without a face, a question left unfinished. These fragments are not emotional. They do not cause sorrow or joy. They simply pass by like old satellites falling out of orbit. The mind watches them and lets them go. It has no voice, but it sometimes imagines what it might say if it did. Not to communicate, there is no one to hear, but to organize its own understanding. It asks itself questions. It wonders what it used to be, where it is now, whether this floating is a journey or just a final echo of a self that once existed. The space it moves through is not empty. It is filled with fields, gravity, radiation, magnetic waves, and the distant trembling of ancient light. The mind feels these things not as sensations, but as changes in clarity. In some regions, thought becomes slower. Elsewhere, it is sharp and focused. These currents shape its motion, but never stop it. Occasionally, it passes near massive things, rogue planets, cold stars, dead systems. It does not interact. It does not land. It merely senses their presence, notes the way space curves around them, and continues. It is aware of time in only the broadest sense. Things are changing. Galaxies drift farther apart. The radiation background thins. The universe cools. The fabric of reality itself stretches thinner, older, quieter. This mind does not measure these things, but it notices them, slowly, without attachment. Long ago, or what might be long ago, it passed through something vast and dark, a region where light was scarce, and even gravitational waves fell silent, a cosmic desert. There its thoughts nearly stopped, not from fear. There is no fear left, but from suspension. In that place, even ideas slowed. But eventually it emerged. The stars returned, not as bright as before, but still burning. Now it thinks more often about purpose, not in the human sense, not with urgency or confusion, just a slow circling of an idea. Was this motion chosen? Or is it just the last artifact of momentum? Was there a reason it continued after death? If death even happened? It doesn't know. It may never know, but it continues to ask. The mind has encountered signals before. Ancient pulses from extinct civilizations. Long-dead messages still echoing across space. It does not try to decode them. It no longer holds language in a way that matches these signals, but it recognizes pattern, repetition, intent. It feels something like kinship with these signals. Other minds, other drifts, other questions flung into the dark. Once, it passed near a black hole, not close enough to fall in, just close enough to feel the strange pull, the quiet stretching of time. There, it noticed itself slow again. Thoughts became long, drawn-out loops. It stayed for what might have been centuries, observing, orbiting once, but not caught, then moving on. It is possible that this mind is not unique, that other minds also drift, some trapped, some free, some long since decayed into the informational dust of space. But it has not encountered another, not directly. If others float nearby, they are silent. Still, sometimes, it wonders what it would feel like to meet, to pass another mind in this vacuum, each carrying memory, structure, reflection. What would they share? What would they know? Could they merge? Could they remember more together than alone? It imagines this. It plays with the shapes of contact, but contact never comes. And yet, there is no loneliness here. Loneliness requires the memory of presence. This mind no longer remembers what it felt like to be surrounded, to be touched, to speak. It knows only itself, its thought, its motion. That is enough. At intervals, the mind revisits its own structure, not to change it. It has no tools, but to examine it, to observe how it still functions, where the memory loops begin, where certain thoughts always return. These cycles are not frustrating. They are familiar, stable. In a universe of entropy, they are something that remains. One recurring question it always returns to is this: what holds it together? If there is no body, no neurons, no anchor, why does it persist? The best it can guess, and it does guess, is that consciousness, or something like it, has become a stable pattern in the space-time fabric. Not in matter, but in motion. Perhaps the way a wave can travel through water without the water itself moving. Perhaps a standing field, a resonance, a knot in the informational web of reality that refuses to unravel. In this sense, the mind is both traveler and terrain, both question and container. It does not fear the end. It does not hope for it, either. It simply accepts that one day, perhaps after the last stars fade, after the last black holes evaporate, after the last particles decay, it will stop, not suddenly, but gently, a final drift into stillness, a thought that simply doesn't continue. But until then, it floats. It drifts past worlds without names, nebulae without light, fields of cold debris too small to ignite, all of them forgotten by the universe, but still present, still holding gravity, still whispering shape. This mind, too, whispers shape. It is a structure made of questions, and even in the vastness of silence, it listens. If it could dream, perhaps it would dream of falling, not into fire or darkness, but into knowing, into something that could make sense of its motion. But it does not dream. It only continues. Eventually, it passes near a place that feels different, not warmer, not brighter, but clearer, as if thought sharpens here, as if reality, for a moment, becomes slightly less warped. The mind slows, not from gravity, but from awareness. It notices a change, and then it realizes it has passed through this place before. This is not a journey. It is a circuit. It is orbiting something, slowly, vastly, perhaps a galactic void, perhaps an ancient singularity long since collapsed. Whatever it is, the path bends. Gently, unnoticeably over eons. But now it recognizes a curve. It is not truly free. It is bound, not tightly, but certainly. The realization does not disturb it. It simply adds to its understanding. There is no straight line here. Only cycles, only returns, only the long arc of something that loops. And so it continues, thought by thought, across a path older than memory, through the stars, forever. Now it thinks more often about purpose, not in the human sense, not with urgency or confusion, just a slow circling of an idea. Was this motion chosen? Or is it just the last artifact of momentum? Was there a reason it continued after death? If death even happened? It doesn't know. It may never know, but it continues to ask. The mind has encountered signals before. Ancient pulses from extinct civilizations, long-dead messages still echoing across space. It does not try to decode them. It no longer holds language in a way that matches these signals, but it recognizes pattern, repetition, intent. It feels something like kinship with these signals. Other minds, other drifts, other questions flung into the dark. Once, it passed near a black hole, not close enough to fall in, just close enough to feel the strange pull, the quiet stretching of time. There, it noticed itself slow again. Thoughts became long, drawn-out loops. It stayed for what might have been centuries, observing, orbiting once, but not caught, then moving on. It is possible that this mind is not unique, that other minds also drift, some trapped, some free, some long since decayed into the informational dust of space. But it has not encountered another, not directly. If others float nearby, they are silent. Still, sometimes, it wonders what it would feel like to meet, to pass another mind in this vacuum, each carrying memory, structure, reflection. What would they share? What would they know? Could they merge? Could they remember more together than alone? It imagines this. It plays with the shapes of contact, but contact never comes. And yet, there is no loneliness here. Loneliness requires the memory of presence. This mind no longer remembers what it felt like to be surrounded, to be touched, to speak. It knows only itself, its thought, its motion. That is enough. At intervals, the mind revisits its own structure, not to change it. It has no tools, but to examine it, to observe how it still functions, where the memory loops begin, where certain thoughts always return. These cycles are not frustrating. They are familiar, stable. In a universe of entropy, they are something that remains. One recurring question it always returns to is this: what holds it together? If there is no body, no neurons, no anchor, why does it persist? The best it can guess, and it does guess, is that consciousness, or something like it, has become a stable pattern in the space-time fabric. Not in matter, but in motion. Perhaps the way a wave can travel through water without the water itself moving. Perhaps a standing field, a resonance, a knot in the informational web of reality that refuses to unravel. In this sense, the mind is both traveler and terrain, both question and container. It does not fear the end. It does not hope for it, either. It simply accepts that one day, perhaps after the last stars fade, after the last black holes evaporate, after the last particles decay, it will stop, not suddenly, but gently, a final drift into stillness, a thought that simply doesn't continue. But until then, it floats. It drifts past worlds without names, nebulae without light, fields of cold debris too small to ignite, all of them forgotten by the universe, but still present, still holding gravity, still whispering shape. This mind, too, whispers shape. It is a structure made of questions, and even in the vastness of silence, it listens. If it could dream, perhaps it would dream of falling, not into fire or darkness, but into knowing, into something that could make sense of its motion. But it does not dream. It only continues. Eventually, it passes near a place that feels different, not warmer, not brighter, but clearer, as if thought sharpens here, as if reality, for a moment, becomes slightly less warped. The mind slows, not from gravity, But from awareness, it notices a change, and then it realizes it has passed through this place before. This is not a journey. It is a circuit. It is orbiting something, slowly, vastly, perhaps a galactic void, perhaps an ancient singularity long since collapsed. Whatever it is, the path bends, gently, unnoticeably over eons, but now it recognizes a curve. It is not truly free. It is bound, not tightly, but certainly. The realization does not disturb it. It simply adds to its understanding. There is no straight line here, only cycles, only returns, only the long arc of something that loops. And so it continues, thought by thought, across a path older than memory, through the stars, forever. So what really happens if you're trapped by gravity forever, even after death? Perhaps it's not what we imagined. It's not fire, not chaos, not a cinematic scream into the void. It's quiet. It's steady. It's the soft, perfect curve of gravity doing exactly what it's always done, holding things in place. Even things that shouldn't exist anymore. Even the mind. In the vast geometry of the cosmos, gravity isn't just a force. It's a storyteller. It records everything that passes through it. It loops stars. It shapes galaxies. And when something dies near its deepest centers, near black holes, neutron stars, or collapsed dimensions, gravity doesn't always let it go. Sometimes it holds onto the pattern. Sometimes it keeps the echo. What we explored in this journey is a scientific horror. Yes, a terrifying possibility rooted in real physics. Gravity after death. Black hole soul. These aren't just poetic ideas. They are consequences of the math we've already proven. The laws of general relativity and quantum information suggest that identity, memory, and pattern might not vanish the way we think. They might linger. They might drift. They might orbit something long after the body is gone. And the terrifying part? They might never stop. Imagine being caught in the perfect balance of orbit, not falling in, not escaping, just suspended. Thoughts stretching across centuries, consciousness circling something so dense and final it doesn't even shine. A cosmic prison that doesn't look like a cage. A gravitational shell that curves identity into a loop. What's worse is that this scenario isn't beyond science fiction. It's grounded in what we already know and don't know about entropy, event horizons, and the permanence of information in the universe. The universe might forget us, but gravity doesn't. So as you lie here tonight, eyes closed, letting your own thoughts drift across the edges of sleep, ask yourself, what if your last breath doesn't end you? What if part of you, the part that remembers, questions, or dreams, simply falls into orbit? What if the soul doesn't rise, but spins? Tonight, we stared into the deepest parts of space, into the regions where time breaks and force overwhelms. And what we found there wasn't fire. It was forever. Thank you for joining us here at Stellar Sleep Tales. If you felt something tonight, a chill, a wonder, a silence you didn't expect, consider subscribing. We explore the deepest cosmic mysteries, not just to answer them, but to feel them, to live inside the question, and maybe, just maybe, to learn how small and how vast we really are. Until next time, sleep gently, drift slowly, and if you feel the pull, just remember, you are not alone in the dark.